Hey pals, I'm here today to talk about 25 more new releases that I have added to my 2024 TBR. All of these books are coming out in 2024. I love reading a lot of front list and yeah, I think 2024 is looking to be a great year. So I did one video on this already where I spoke about books from authors I've previously read books from. This video is talking about either debut authors or authors who have previous novels out but I haven't read them. So this list is more of a risky list, let's say. What actually happened is this is going to be a long story, but I'm going to do it anyway. When I was planning these videos, I wrote them in two different orders. One order was the one you saw, which was publication order, and one order was based on my confidence and how much I was going to love the book. So I ranked them and started with the one I was dead set that I was going to love, and ended with the one that I was still going to read but was not so confident. And somehow I missed the last three books off that list when I did the video. And the only reason I realised that is because somebody in the comments commented and was like, oh, I'm surprised this one didn't make your list because I know you loved her first book. And I was like, shit, it did make my list. And then I realised I'd missed it. So I'm going to include those three books first. And I will explain why I was maybe a little bit more dubious about them. And then also somebody in the comments was really shocked you haven't included this author's new book because I know you love her and she's one of my favourite authors, and I don't know, maybe when I checked they hadn't announced it yet, but they since have, and so very excited. So I'm going to talk about those four books first, and then I'm going to move on to the 21 books from authors I haven't read before. I'll also say that Albus is being very noisy. He keeps coming in here and trying to get in the cupboard and just being a general knob really. So you may see a fairly edited version because I may have to keep editing out me telling him off, but let's hope that isn't what happens. So the first book comes out on the 2nd of February and it is Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. I read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by this author and I really enjoyed it. And so I was quite surprised to see she had a new book coming out so soon. I don't think that one's been out for very long. And when I initially read the blurb, I was just not quite sure. But I really liked her tone. I thought the dark humour really worked in her previous book. I think she writes really well about people who just find society and communicating with others really awkward, and I think we're going to get that again in this book. It says Enid is many things: lesbian, serial dater, deaf in one ear, space obsessive, true crime fanatic. As Enid fumbles her way through her first serious relationship and navigates a new family life with her estranged half-sisters, she starts to worry that someone is following her. As her paranoia spirals out of control, Enid must contend with her mounting suspicion that something is seriously wrong with her. Full of charm, humour and heart, Interesting Facts About Space is a pitch-perfect exploration of the strange ways we try to connect with others and the power of sharing our secret selves with the people we love. So yeah, I think that one sounds pretty intriguing. Let me know if you will be reading this one as well. Then on the 20th of February, we have River Mama by Salika Reed-Benter. And, I was always going to read whatever book she brought out next, but to be honest, if this was written by any other author, I wouldn't be picking it up. And the reason for that is that this has an edge of urban fantasy, which is something I just don't really enjoy. I used to be more into the touch of magical stuff in realistic fiction, but now not massively into it. But I loved her writing. This is still about a young woman. So this is about a young woman who is growing up on the streets of Toronto. She's just out of grad school. She doesn't really have much about her life sorted. Then one evening, the Jamaican water deity River Mama appears to Alicia, telling her that she has 24 hours to scour the city for her missing comb. So yeah, it sort of follows her on this adventure as the clock ticks. It says it's energetic and invigorating, a vibrant exploration of a diasporic community and ancestral ties, but one of the most invigorating voices in today's literature. So I love the sound of all of that except for the, God stuff. But I'm going to trust this author. I'm still going to pre-order this one. And the next one comes out on the 4th of April, and that is The Axeman's Carnival by Catherine Chidgey. Now, I wouldn't usually read this one because it is told from the perspective of a talking bird. That sounds awful to me, but I really enjoyed Pet by this author. I thought it was really good. And I actually reviewed that and Emily Austen's book in a recent video, which I'll link above. And so I'm willing to give this a go. And I think that we're sort of seeing the human world through the eyes of this bird, and this bird is sort of commenting on these sort of weird traditions we have and weird ways we have of communicating, and I like the sound of that. So yeah, this woman who's unhappily married, her husband I think is quite violent and quite a horrible man, finds this bird and sorts to become famous because she has this talking bird, and it says, part trickster, part surrogate child, part witness, Tama the magpie is the star of this story. Though what he says aloud to humans is often nonsensical and hilarious, the tale he tells us weaves a disturbingly human sense. The Axeman's Carnival is Catherine Chidkey at her finest, comic, profound, poetic and true. So yeah, again, we'll be picking this one up. And then the last one is one I completely missed. I guess maybe it's coming out a bit later in the year. I don't know how I didn't know about this. It comes out on the 29th of August and it is My Good Bright Wolf by Sarah Moss. Sarah Moss is one of my favourite authors. I'd probably put her up there in top 3. I've read every book she's written. I absolutely adore them. And yeah, this is a memoir. She's previously written a memoir called Strangers in Iceland, which is about a period of a time in her life where she lived in Iceland. I haven't been able to find a blurb of this book yet, so I'm not quite sure what aspect of her life this focuses on, but I love her writing, I love a memoir, and I love that title, so 100% will be pre-ordering this one. And then on to the books from authors I haven't read before. The first one is Brought Up Sea by Christina Cook, and it comes out on the 23rd of January. This one is, I think, an American publication from an indie press, so I'll be buying this one. This one sounds really interesting. It's about a young Jamaican woman who has grown up in Canada, estranged from her half-sister, but their brother passes away from sickle cell anemia, which is the condition their mother died from. So they reconnect in Jamaica to sort of visit family members, and they realise how different they are to one another. And then our protagonist, it says, while she's wandering through Kingston with her brother's ashes, she meets Jada, a brash stripper who shows her a different side of the city. As the two grow closer, Akua confronts the difficult reality of being gay in a deeply religious family and what being a gay woman in Jamaica actually means. By turns, diasporic family saga, Bildungsroman and terse sexual awakening, Brought Up Sea is a profoundly moving debut novel and asks, what do we truly owe our family and what are we willing to do to savour the feeling of home? So yeah. Again, one I think has lots of themes that I'm interested in. Then on the 1st of February, I think this one's going to be a really big release, and the publisher have already bought like 3 books from this author, so she's got a free book deal on a debut novel that's pretty amazing, and that's Winter Animals by Ashani Lewis. This is being described as if The Secret History was written by Raven Lalani, which does sound pretty intriguing. I mean, I always think it's a bit cruel to compare any author's work to The Secret History, but it does sound pretty good. It says it's decadent and addictive, sapphic debut, a must-read for fans of The Secret History and White Lotus. We follow this woman in one of America's happiest cities. She's 38 and she's trapped under the shadow of the snow-capped Cascade Mountains. Her husband has just left her. She meets 4 English teenagers in an empty bar and she sort of becomes really enamoured with them. But she senses a violent secret that fuels the four's never-ending disappearing act. Dazzling, cultish, and intensely committed to creating their own utopia, they force Ellen to ruminate on the irresistible pull of bright young things. She doesn't understand what they want from her, but how can she leave when she has nowhere else to go? Then I saw this one in Jen's anticipated releases video, which I'll link above because I think she spoke about 30 books in there, and we don't have a lot of crossover. So if you want to hear about even more new releases of 2024, I highly recommend that video. One I heard Jen talk about, but I was like, how the hell did I miss this? It sounds amazing. Is Mongrel by Hanako Footman. Did I say it comes out on February the 8th? This is another debut novel. This is just the sort of novel I love and adore because it's told from 3 perspectives, all of which are women. One of them loses her Japanese mother at age 6 and she grows up in suburban Surrey. Yuki leaves the Japanese countryside to pursue her dream of becoming a concert violinist in London, and Haruka attempts to navigate Tokyo's nightlife and all of its many vices whilst grieving her mother. Shifting between 3 intertwining narratives, Mongrel reveals a tangled web of desire, isolation, belonging, and ultimately hope. I love stories from multiple perspectives, especially when all those perspectives are women. And yeah, I think this sounds like an interesting voice. Again, we'll be pre-ordering this one. And then on the 12th of March, we have We Were Once a Family, a story of love, death, and child removal in America by Roxana Asgharian. This is a true crime book, and I always very dubious about true crime and like what voice it centres, and yeah, I think there's a bit of sort of morbid curiosity there, which I'm not a fan of, but I am interested in true crime books like this that are more analysing the social structures, the social injustices that allowed that crime to happen. And this book looks at, and this is horrific crime, the shocking, deeply reported story of a murder-suicide that claimed the lives of 6 children and a searing indictment of the American foster care system. 2 women were found at the bottom of a cliff along the Pacific coast in a crumpled SUV with these children, and they were all dead. And it turned out these women had fostered these children, and my understanding is that, yeah, so Jennifer and Sarah Hart were a white married couple and they had adopted 6 black children from 2 different Texas families. Behind the family's loving facade was an alleged pattern of abuse and neglect that had been ignored as the couple withdrew the children from school and moved west. And it became apparent that the sort of social care system that had given them custody of these children was just not involved and didn't know what they should have known. So yeah, I will borrow this one from the library. I want to go in prepared for this, not to be good, and I won't read it as just some sort of grisly recounting. But like I said, I'm really interested in true crime narratives that look at how, as a society, we could have prevented the crime from happening, and how, as a society, we've sort of failed in letting the crime happen. So there is that one. Then on the 21st of March, we have Memory Piece by Lisa Coe. This sounds a tiny bit similar to Mongrel in that it is also about 3 women, although I think these 3 women are friends. Now, Lisa Coe has had a previous novel that I think was quite successful, but I wasn't as intrigued by the premise of that one, so I didn't pick it up. But this one sounds like a book I will love. It opens in the early 1980s. We follow Giselle Chin, Jackie Yong and Ellen Ng, who are 3 teenagers drawn together by their shared sense of alienation and desire for something different. And we follow them into their adulthood as they all have these different jobs and inhabit really different spaces. It says, moving from the pre-digital 1980s to the art and tech subcultures of the 1990s to a strikingly imagined portrait of the 2040s, Memory Piece is an innovative and audacious story of 3 lifelong friends as they strive to build satisfying lives in a world that turns out to be radically different from the one they were promised. Love that. I love novels about friendship, particularly female friendship. Then on the 26th of March, we have another sort of true crime non-fiction book, and that is Rabbit Heart, A Mother's Murder, A Daughter's Story by Christine N. Irvin. I love that title, I love that cover. Now, I'm hoping that this is going to be similar to The Eclipse by Sarah Perry, which is one of my favourite novels of all time. Both of these novels explore what it's like as a young girl to lose your mother to a brutal murder, and what it is like for your mother to be made into like this perfect victim when actually there are many facets to this woman. She was more than just a mother, and sort of imagining the woman she was and the woman she could have continued to be. And it says, in the process of this, she reckons with contradictions of what a woman is allowed to be, a self beyond the roles of wife, mother, daughter, victim, what a true victim is supposed to look like, and finally, how complicated and elusive justice can be. So I feel like this could be a book I absolutely love. We'll definitely be pre-ordering this one as well. Then on the 11th of April, we have Hagstone from Sinead Gleeson. She's previously written a memoir, which I've heard so many people rave about. I really need to read it, but this is her debut novel. This sounds great. We follow a woman who lives on a wild and rugged island, cut off and isolated. She is an artist, and her art is really focused on the landscape and folklore and the feminine. And there is this group of women called the Inians, who are a commune who travelled there from all over the world, and they consider this island a place of refuge and safety. And they invite her to come and stay with them and commission this big art piece. And it's about her time with them and things she discovers about the community. It says it looks at the darker side of human nature and the mysteries of faith and the natural world. And it says this is perfect for fans of Margaret Atwood, okay, and Sarah Moss. So I have to read this one. And on the 16th of April, we have another book about several women. This is about 4 sisters, and that is The Alternatives by Kaylin Hughes. I have meant to read, I think, her debut novel called The Wild Laughter, which is about brothers, but I haven't got around to it. But this one sounds amazing. I think 2024 is going to be my year of reading lots of books from the perspective of multiple women, which I will take much joy in. So in this, we follow the Flattery sisters, who've been plunged prematurely into adulthood when their parents have died in tragic circumstances. All of them are in their 30s, all of them are single, and all of them have PhDs, and they're all trying to do meaningful work in like their different career paths. And they're all living in like different parts of the world until one day their older sister, a geologist haunted by a terrible awareness of the Earth's future, abruptly vanishes from her work and home. Together, for the first time in years, the Flatterys descend on the Irish countryside in search of a sister who doesn't want to be found. This says it is an unforgettable portrait of a family perched on a collective precipice, told by one of Ireland's greatest storytellers. Just everything about that sounds intriguing. 4 sisters, one of them going missing, one of them being a geologist, which is one of the careers I considered going into. And yeah, them all coming together in this like bungalow in the countryside. So this one sounds great. Then on the 16th of April, we have A Kind of Madness by Uche Okonkwo. This is beautifully published by Tin House Books. I think I have a couple more books from them on the list. This is a short story collection set in contemporary Nigeria, and the stories are all concerned with literal madness, but also those private feelings that, when left unspoken, can feel like a type of madness: desire, desperation, hunger, fear, sadness, shame, and longing. So yeah, it has a description of what the stories are about. I fear this video is getting too long, so I'm going to try and start going through these quicker, but go look into this one. All the stories sound brilliant. And then on the 25th of April, we have another debut novel, which I think is going to be quite big in the UK, and that is Whale Fall by Elizabeth O'Connor. This is set on an island off the coast of Wales in 1938, and we're following Manod, who is a young woman, and she's struggling to imagine a future for herself. It's a really difficult time, and two anthropologists from the mainland arrive, and they ask to be shown the island. But as she guides them along the island's cliff, she becomes entangled in their relationship, and her imagined future begins to feel desperately out of reach. This is a story of longing and betrayal set against the backdrop of a world on the edge of great tumult. This makes me think of Euphoria by Lily King, which was about some anthropologists and actually was based on some real life anthropologists and a sort of love triangle. I really enjoyed that and would love to read more books about like anthropologists and conservationists, because that is actually the area I did end up training in. So yeah, going to be pre-ordering this one. Then on the 2nd of May, absolutely love the sound of this one, so again this will be pre-ordered, is Company by Shannon Sanders. This is told, it says it's a richly detailed, brilliantly woven debut about the life and law of one Black American family, told in 13 distinct snapshots of their family gatherings. So there's 4 children and they have this complicated inheritance, and it says she brings us into the company of this majestically complicated, multi-generational family as they meet, bicker, celebrate, worry, keep and reveal secrets, build lives and careers, and endure. I love the idea. I love interconnected short story collections. I love family drama. And I really like the idea of only looking at them at these family gatherings. I think depending on what type of family you are, they can be really tense affairs. So I think it's a great ground for like really interesting stories. So yeah, we'll be reading this one. Then on the 7th of May, we have First Love, Essays on Friendship by Lily Danziger. Now, I think she's previously had a memoir out called Negative Space, which I would really like to read, but this is an essay collection, and I'm going to read you a fair amount of the blurb because I think this sounds beautiful and I can't do it justice. Reaching outward to dissect cultural assumptions about identity and desire and the many ways women create space for each other in a world that wants us small. It seamlessly weaves personal experience with literature and pop culture, ranging from fairy tale to true crime, from Anais Nin and Sylvia Plath to Heavenly Creatures and the Sad Girls of Tumblr. These essays form a kaleidoscopic story of a life told through friendships and an expansive interrogation of what it means to love each other. Oh, I honestly feel like this could be like one of my favourite reads of 2024. It sounds amazing. Then on May the 7th, we have The Skunks by Fiona Warnick. I'm a tiny bit more dubious about this one than a lot of the books on the collection, and I am denied about keeping it on or off, but this has a blurb from Annie Hartnett, and I've read one of her novels and sort of really enjoyed the sort of comic edge to it, and this is about skunks, so pretty much want to read it. So we follow this young woman. It's the summer after a college graduation. She doesn't have much going on, and her mind's always like whirring away, and one day she spots 3 baby skunks in the yard, and she decides she's going to look after them. So it says, as the summer unfolds, Isabel becomes increasingly preoccupied with the skunks, whilst also navigating her various jobs and an ambiguous relationship with Eli, the son of the couple she's house-sitting for. In her own life and in the imagined inner lives of the skunks, Isabel ponders the nature of existence, love versus infatuation, and the many small moments that make us human, make us animal. The Skunks is an unforgettable coming-of-age story about the complexity of crushes, desire, friendship, and modern life. So I think this will have a bit of a comic edge to it, especially because it's blurbed by Annie Hartnett, and that's sort of what her book was like. But yeah, you know, the book has skunks in it. I have to read this one. Then on the 14th of May, we have another memoir, and that is Strip Tease by Kate Flannery. I love that title and that cover. And this sounds amazing. It sounds like this author grew up in a similar era to me. It says, you know, it's the era when we saw Paris Hilton on the TV and when we all watched and loved The OC. And it follows the author as, after she gets her college diploma, she starts working for American Apparel, which means that she is in a lot of their ad campaigns. And it says she strips down in the name of feminism. She begins to lose herself in this really rowdy landscape. And it says the line between sexual liberation and exploitation quickly grows hazy, leading Kate to question the company's ethics and wrestle with her own. It says the book captures a moment in our recent past that's already sepia-toned in nostalgia and also paints a timeless portrait of a young woman who must choose between what business demands and self-respect requires. I think that sounds excellent. Then on the 21st of May, we have another memoir, and that is The Story Game. I can't find out how to pronounce this author's name, so I'm just going to put the cover up because I don't want to butcher it. This memoir sounds really interesting. I've said a lot recently, I'm really interested in the idea of memory and I guess like the flaws in our memory and how different people remember different events differently. And it says, in the humid dark of a eucalyptus scented room, a woman lies on a mattress telling stories about herself to her listener, a little girl. She talks about her identity as the child of an immigrant, her feelings about being in a mixed race marriage, her opinions on mental health. But as the story progresses, it becomes clear that a volatile secret is lurking beneath the surface. There are events in the author's past that have great significance for the person she's become, but they have gone missing from her memory. What is it exactly that is haunting her? And just as importantly, what is the room that she is lying in? Who is the little girl she keeps talking to? And who actually is she herself? So yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting exploration of memory and PTSD, and it's supposed to be like really beautifully written. Then on the 4th of June, we have Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. I have been meaning to read his short story collection, which came out a couple of years ago and was called Night of the Living Res. I still want to read that. But this is his first novel, I think. And it says that we follow this man who lives on the Penobscot Reservation in Maine, and he is watching this family across the way who are raising their only child, Elizabeth. He watches them from the day they come home from the hospital until she's in her early 20s. And that is because she is his daughter, and that's been a secret. A few weeks have gone by and he hasn't seen her, and he attempts to hold on and care for what he can, but he becomes increasingly haunted by his past. Forced to confront a lost childhood on the reservation, a love affair cut short, and the death of his beloved stepfather in a hunting accident, a death that he and Louise could not agree where to lay the blame. He contends with questions he's long been afraid to ask. Is it a secret to share, and would his daughter want to know the truth? It says it's a masterful and unforgettable story of family, legacy, bloodlines, culture and inheritance, and what, if anything, we owe one another. I've just heard great things about this author's work and would like to read both this first novel and his short story collection in 2024. Then on the 11th of June, we have The Sisters K by Maureen Sun. Now, I think this is somewhat of a retelling of The Brothers Karamazov, which I have not read and do not intend to, but again, it is about 3 sisters. It says, Eugene Kim assembles his 3 estranged daughters at his deathbed. Vicious and pathetic in equal measure, he wants to test who will object themselves for his favour and, more importantly, his fortune. Each of the sisters are isolated and desperate to escape their circumstances. They struggle with the legacy of their abusive father as they attempt to imagine a life without him. It says, this debut novel is a vivid drama about what it is we owe each other and ourselves when vengeance is the only thing called for. I think this could be a little bit violent and dark, but I'm very much intrigued by it. 25th of June, we have Bear by Julia Phillips, and this is actually getting quite funny now, like as I go through this list. It's only when I start saying it out loud, I realise how many books on this list I have about female friendships or sisters. So here's another novel about sisters. I haven't read this author's first novel, which is called Disappearing Earth. I have it out from the library at the moment. I will be reading it in the next couple of weeks, hoping to love it. This is her new novel. Also think this one sounds really interesting. And what she does in both novels is she uses a lot of like the natural world in her stories, which is something I love. These 2 sisters' lives are upended by an unexpected visitor. They see a bear. They live in the forest on an island off the coast of Washington, and they live there with their mother. One of them works on the ferry and the other one bartends, and both of them are sort of doing that for like wealthier tourists. Then one night, one of them spots a bear swimming the dark waters. Where is it going? What does it mean? When the bear turns up at their home, she is terrified, but more convinced than ever that it's time to leave the island. This is a story about the bonds of sisterhood and the mysteries of the animals that live among us. It is a propulsive, mythical, richly imagined novel from one of the most acclaimed young writers in America. I think that sounds wonderful. I would love to read a novel about sisters and a bear. Then on July 4th, we have The End of Drum Time by Hannah Pulvainen. I think this one might already be published in North America, but this is its UK release. And this is a historical fiction that is set in 1851 in a remote village in the Scandinavian tundra. We follow a Lutheran minister as he tries to convert some native Sami herders to his faith, but he meets the daughter of one of these herders and sort of this joint infatuation grows It says that it grows into something that ultimately crosses borders of cultures and beliefs and of political divides as he follows the herders on their arduous annual migration north to the sea. Gorgeously written and sweeping in scope, The End of Drum Time immerses readers in a world lit by the northern lights, steeped in age-old rituals and guided by passions that transcend place and time. And I think this is sort of part of the author's family history. So yeah, I think it'll be from an interesting perspective. And ultimately, on August the 6th, we have The Age of Loneliness by Laura Maris. This is a collection of essays. It has a lovely cover. It is a debut collection that reframes environmental degradation by setting aside the conventional catastrophic framework of the Anthropocene in favour of that of the Eremocene, not heard of that, the Age of Loneliness, marked by the dramatic thinning of wildlife populations and by isolation between and among species. She asks, how do we add to archives of ecological memory? How can we notice and document what's missing in the landscapes closest to us? It just sounds amazing, the description of like the different essays within the book, and they all sound beautiful, and I love reading about the natural world and want to try and make a more concerted effort to seek out books, fiction and non-fiction, that talk about the natural world. And also on August the 6th, we have Mystery Lights by Lena Valencia. This has an absolutely brilliant cover. I'm not going to lie and say that isn't what pulled me in. This is a short story collection that is set primarily in deserts through the American Southwest. The collection is the stories about women and girls at the crossroads of mundane daily life and existential dread. From the all-too-real horror of a sexual predator on a college campus to a lost sister transformed by cave-dwelling creatures, Mystery Lights grapples with terrors both familiar and fantastic, introducing an electrifying new voice in contemporary fiction while bringing to light the many faces of the forces that haunt us. So I haven't read many short story collections that border like a little bit on sci-fi or horror recently, and I usually tend to avoid them, but I think this sounds like one that I could actually really enjoy. And yeah, like I said, the cover is really swaying me here. I'd love to know if you are interested in any of the books I mentioned. I would also love to know if you think I need to add any more books to my list of 2024 new releases, because yeah, I love reading new releases. So I'm very much excited to talk about, I'm sure, the vast majority of these books next year. In 2023, I did a few pre-order videos and I have read or DNF'd, I would say 90-95% of those books. So I really do get to the books that I say I will now, because I have such a small physical TBR, and I love that. So have no worries about sort of hearing me talk about these books and then never actually reading them. I 100% will. And I just already feel super excited for what type of reading year 2024 will be. So I'd love to know your thoughts on anything I've said down below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.